Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here at the very top of the show, I think Joy has a slightly non-music related thing for us.
Okay, so Tim and me recently did kind of the 10 things we like, 10 things we don't like, and I thought that was kind of cute. So I was looking around, and one thing that I was seeing rolling out on the internet was people talking about their icks. And if you don't know what an ick is, it's just like things that bother you, like what your pet peeves, whatever. And I asked him to pick two of his from work, and I picked two of mine. So I'll start with one, and then I'll let him tell one, and we'll just go back and forth. So my first one is when people send emails or anything, send emails, phone calls, whatever. And no matter what it is, Tim, the level of urgency is extremely heightened. They have to have that urgent email, like, you know how you can check that box in Outlook. They have to have, and it could be as simple as like, hey, I noticed that, you know, blah, blah, blah is not where it should be. The hand soap is missing. And you're like, I stopped everything because you marked this as urgent, high importance. I hate that high importance tag, by the way. That one gives me PTSD and my eye twitches because guess what, guys? Unless you are literally doing brain surgery or it is like something bad is going to happen, it probably isn't that urgent. Yes, we prioritize, but as an HR manager of one for a national company, Tim, not everything can be up here or I would lose my mind.
Absolutely. Well, I have a pro tip on that, and I do this in my Outlook session, and I recommend everybody does that. Go into the column settings and hide the urgency tab.
I know exactly what Tim was going to say, because I think he made that recommendation to me when we worked together previously, because there was a certain person who will not be named and shamed who would like to do that on every email. And one day I said, my eye is beginning to twitch. And he was like, just turn it off. Just turn it off.
In fact, most of those columns that you get in Outlook are pointless. So I just turn off all the ones you're not going to need.
And then, yeah, we'll roll into my next one, whatever, but it's related. But yeah, I can't stand someone who thinks everything is of the highest importance. Because let's be honest, Tim, it isn't. It really isn't.
Absolutely.
But anyway, what's yours, Tim?
Okay, well, I don't come across this a great deal, to be honest. I'm very lucky in that respect. But this is something I've had in previous jobs, is incompetence on other people's part, which is bad enough. But incompetence when you then have to fix it.
And you're always the one stuck fixing it.
Yeah, so that someone you work with who doesn't know what they're doing messes something up. And then what do you have to do? You have to go back in after them and then spend time to fix it. It's very infuriating.
Especially when it's something you've had a conversation with them about before, or this is not the first, you know what I mean, Tim? It's not their first rodeo. It's also like sometimes just like if you don't know the answer, don't touch it. Let's talk to the right people before you do it. Yeah. I can see that. And especially working in HR, I feel you on that one. And for those who don't know, even though Tim's 107, he is technically a technology manager.
Allegedly a technology manager. You know, my remit is everything from fixing laptops to telling people to fix laptops. And I spent most of the day editing videos.
We don't actually know what Tim's doing. We just smile and nod. It's from day to day. I feel, Tim, it just ranges.
Yeah, my job ends up touching a lot of stuff. I mean, today I was wheeling photocopiers onto a trailer. I was also editing corporate videos. What else did I do? I did something else that was unrelated. I can't remember, but you know, I get involved in all kinds of things.
Look at you, Tim. Just a man of the people, just doing everything. Jack of all trades, you know?
Well, that's me. You know how it is.
All right. So my next one is kind of a very specific thing, but I've seen it a lot at work and it drives me insane. And there's probably twofold why this happens. I hate when someone has moved into a management role and it's like they lost touch of the lower level roles. So, for example, I was a call center manager for years. And if you have someone screaming at one of your core call center agents and they want a manager, just take the call from the person who is paid less than you. And you know what I'm talking about, Tim? Because I've had managers do this and I've seen it play out before where they're just like, they push it back on the lower level person and try to get them to handle it. No, You're the manager. Just deal with it. You're being paid more money to deal with it. Take the call. I don't like the pushback on someone who's in a lower level position who shouldn't have to deal with it. That's why we're paying you more money.
Absolutely. The amount of times when something comes up in my place of work and the person who's handling it doesn't know what to do, or they've got into it's some kind of complicated situation, rather than me trying to explain to them and tell them, it's like almost exclusively I say, put it through to my extension, I'll figure it out.
And even if I can't take the call right then, I will let that person leave a voicemail and I will call them back. But get it off the phone of the person who's dealing with it in that moment.
Oh, sure, because sometimes things come up and the person who's doing the lower level job doesn't have the access, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have any of the background of it, which is why it's just easier. Put it through to me, I'll figure it out.
Yep, that's just one of my pet peeves. And I feel like it comes down to, it's almost like we talk a lot with like the government, when someone's been doing something for so long, like they've been a manager for so long, they lose touch with like basic reality. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain it, but that is my ick. All right, Tim, what's yours?
Right, my last ick, a little bit more lighthearted, sort of.
I took it too seriously, of course.
But my workplace ick is fridge science projects.
Oh, so like when people leave stuff in the fridge for too long?
Yeah, so you buy your lunch, you put it in the fridge, and then you eat it. Or maybe like me, where I eat out every day and I mostly eat half of it. Then I put it in the fridge and then I heat the other half up the next day. And I do that to save money, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not going to eat it the second day or not eat it that day or even the day after, please throw it out. There's nothing worse than going in the fridge and finding a bowl of rice something that came from a local restaurant of unknown vintage with some kind of new penicillin drug growing in it.
Well, and from an HR standpoint, when I worked at Kroger, because HR was kind of a catch-all, right, Tim? Mm-hmm. I was the person who would have to clean that out occasionally. And let me tell you, no one wants to have to be that person. And then you feel bad if you throw out somebody's actual lunch they were planning on. Because like one time we had this thing where if it wasn't labeled right properly, I just tossed it off. Do you know the amount of people who yelled at me that day because I threw out their lunch? But I didn't know what I was supposed to keep and what I wasn't supposed to keep. But the only reason I was doing it is because people wouldn't throw things away.
Yeah, I mean, we in our little department where we are in the IT department, we have our own fridge. And I'm not shy about cleaning that fridge out or throwing stuff out. Though I normally say, does this belong to anyone? And if it says no, it gets thrown away.
There we go, Tim. I mean, it's just common sense at this point. And I feel like it's like, especially where you work now, I feel like it's people who travel a lot and they like put it in the building and then they're like 3 cities over 2 days later and just completely forget all about it. Absolutely.
But I would say if you work in an office and there's a fridge, please throw old stuff out. It's just horrible.
Fair enough. All right. What's next, sir?
Okay, so we actually are inviting a special guest onto this episode just for a segment. The person in question is Molly Lawson. And she had her own episode a few episodes ago, and she was talking about the soundtrack of her life. But she was talking about festivals, and in particular, a festival that she went to. I believe it was the Blue Ridge Rock Festival, and there was a lot of fallout about that. So, Molly, what do you have for us?
I went to the festival. We had 3-day passes. We were going to park there on Friday and camp with our friends. So we got there Friday around 1:00 or so and got in line for the shuttles. We waited in line for over an hour. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't as bad as we were expecting. However, we learned that if we got there 30 minutes later than we did, they would have turned us away because they oversold the event.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah, so we were pretty fortunate to get in. So we got there, got to our campsite. Friday was good music-wise. We actually got to see several bands. It was enjoyable. Saturday rolls around, and we're getting ready, and we get maybe sprinkling rain just a little bit. And we get an update that they're not going to open the doors until noon because of the weather. So we're like, okay, fine. Then maybe 30, 45 minutes later, we get an alert saying that they've canceled Saturday completely because of the weather. No bands are going to play. And we were like, great, because Saturday was the day when most of who we wanted to see was going to be playing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Never fails.
We're like, okay, well, this sucks. And, then they told us around 5 p.m. there would be an update regarding Sunday. We're just sitting around waiting. And mind you, the way that they are giving us updates is through their social media stories. That's the only way we're finding anything out.
I just imagine somebody with a bullhorn yelling at you.
Well, something, because at this particular venue, the internet service was terrible. So I was having to ask people back home. Like, I posted on my story hoping someone would see it and could get better internet connection, give me an update on the weather or something, Yeah,
because I wrote you talking about it. I remember now.
Yeah. 5 o'clock rolls around and we get an alert about a band performing in the campgrounds that night. And we're like, okay, well, that's great. But what about Sunday? Well, then a few minutes later, we get another story update that Sunday was canceled and just, we're done. The festival's done. And they said it was because of the weather. We packed up, we headed home. There's been Facebook groups created where people can exchange stories. And, through all of that, we came to find out that the actual reasons for the cancellations were that they oversold the event. The venue was way over capacity. There were numerous health and safety violations.
They weren't feeding any of their employees.
Oh, yeah. They treated not only the fans, but the bands, the employees terribly. They walked out. And so they didn't have staffing for the event. That was probably the biggest reason that they ended up canceling everything. And I don't blame those stagehands one bit.
So I have a question for you. So you say about the weather. So obviously the reason that the festival was a disaster was because of all these reasons that you've just said. And they're blaming it on the weather. Was the weather bad or was it just a little bit of rain?
On Saturday, just a tiny bit of rain in the morning. Thursday, there was a terrible storm that blew through. We were not there on Thursday, so I can't speak too much on that experience. But I do know that at this particular venue, unless you're camping on site, you have to park 5 miles away and shuttle on buses. They won't let you get dropped off. They don't allow ride sharing. They don't even allow you to walk. They say it's not safe. So your vehicle is 5 miles away. So when these storms hit, this rain, this hail, thunder, lightning, everything left thousands of people stranded waiting on the shuttle out in the middle of this storm. So Thursday's weather was bad. Saturday, though, it rained a little bit and then it cleared up. It was beautiful. Some of the bands actually made TikToks like, oh, look at this weather. It's perfect for an outdoor concert here in Virginia. Yeah, it's great. Because it was literally perfect. The temperature was cool. It was perfect weather. The weather was not the reason at all.
Wasn't there supposed to be some hurricane thing? And so it was the perfect storm for them to use an excuse or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, that we were apparently supposed to get hit by that hurricane pretty hard. But then if you had anyone with common sense looking at radar could have seen that wasn't going to happen. It cleared up. I don't know exactly what happened. It changed directions. I don't know, but no weather happened.
So I was reading a lot about there's the one that came out about Slipknot. Slipknot went through and paid all the stagehands themselves and paid for their food and did all kinds of stuff for the people because the concert venue legitimately just didn't do it.
They didn't. Yeah. It was so disorganized. And I think his name, Tank, is the touring manager for the band Electric Callboy while they're on their North American tour. And he has a YouTube channel. He's pretty well known, and he did a whole video on the experience and said he has never witnessed or been to a more unprofessional, unsafe event. Trying to load their equipment was terrible. Electric Callboy showed up to do a signing, and it got very awkward because they were like, these people are here for someone else, not us. They couldn't even get the right band coordinated with the right autograph signing.
Goodness me.
Yeah, they said it was very awkward. Some stuff went on technically with the stage and setup time, so they ended up sharing equipment. Thankfully the bands were working together with each other. And as far as an update goes, there's not really been anything. I know there's a deadline for people who loaded money on their wristbands to get a refund. But as far as our ticket refunds, we haven't heard. We're still waiting on that.
How many weeks has it been now, Molly?
That was September, like around September 8th, 9th, 10th. So
yeah, I saw a story on WDBJ7 about this, and they said that they were going to release a statement with regards to refunds. So I take it they haven't released a statement.
No, they haven't. Just like everything else, they just basically tell you what you want to hear and nothing.
So effectively, you went to the Fire Festival, but in Virginia.
Basically, we've been calling it like Firefest meets Woodstock 99. That's pretty much a way to sum it up. Granted, our experience was not near anything. I feel so bad for the people who spent thousands upon thousands of dollars, traveled to this event. There were people who came from Australia to this event.
That's the one I read. Some lady was talking about, there was one day in particular she had been trying to track down from Australia didn't get to see him.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get a ticket refund, but these people can't get their money for their flights, their hotels, their time. A lot of people, this was their vacation, their big thing for the year, and just ruined because of Jonathan Sly. I was in an event yesterday, and we did talk to some people who attended as well. And they informed us that some of his friends set up a GoFundMe to get him a new car. And I was like, excuse me, this person who just essentially stole $46 million from people needs a GoFundMe for a car?
Oh, goodness me.
The irony is his last name's Sly. I'm just going to say it. I don't know why. That's why I chuckled when you said it. I was like, of course it is.
Of course it is. Yeah. There's a firsthand account of my disaster.
So the question I have, is this an annual festival or that they've been doing, or has it just been sort of ad hoc? They've done it over the last few years.
It is. I think it started in 2017, I want to say.
And is there a plan for a Blue Ridge Rock Festival 24? And if so, do you think people are going to come out to it?
So they have already started ticket pre-sales for 2024, and Virginia International Raceway has said they will, provide the venue space again. So we're not going. I will never go to another event by Jonathan Sly again.
Tim, you got to pay for that car somehow.
Well, and another thing, though, we were talking about bands within the music scene talk. So I don't see how any reputable band, after hearing about this, actually agree to perform there.
Because even at the local level, I play in local bands that play moose lodges and bars and stuff like that. But, word gets around if someone's ripped you off or a venue's not good or there's fights break out or whatever, local bands talk. And I mean, I can only think at the level that those bands operate at, they're all using the same promoters, the same managers, the same industry people. So, of course, they're going to know what went on.
Well, I mean, it has to be pretty bad when literally Slipknot has to put out a statement saying we had to buy the people working their food. Like, that's pretty bad, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Props to Slipknot, but come on. But anyway, well.
Yes. And like I said, my experience was nothing compared to some of them. Like, you could probably do a whole deep dive into.
And there are some rumors after the fact of people getting like, I don't know, like diseases from parasites or something.
Yeah, because the sanitation was terrible. I'm going to spare the details, but like the porta potties and that's part of the reason they got shut down was the health department.
Well, all right. Well, do you have anything else, Tim, you'd like to say, or Molly?
Well, all I would say is if you eventually get a refund for this, or you hear of anyone getting a refund for this, come back on the show and tell us. Because I mean, I'm intrigued by this because as I said, it's almost like the Fire Festival. It's like someone needs to make a documentary about this because it was so bad.
I said I would be surprised if there's not a documentary within the next few years. I mean, it's one of those things where like those people we met yesterday. It's one of those things now where if you mention Blue Ridge Rock Fest 23 and someone else, was like, it's like, oh, you were there too. Oh, what was it? And then you just get into a whole conversation about the experience. So I would be very surprised if there's not a documentary that comes out on this.
Well, Molly, if they ask for your copy of this interview, let me know if you want me to send it.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on our podcast again.
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
So there we go. That was the update from Molly. So this week, it is my turn to pick the topic. Joy doesn't know what it is, but this is a topic or band which we've spoken about many times, and it's a band that we've not really covered, with as far as their music, but the name has come up a number of times. So I thought this week we would talk about the band Duran Duran.
Oh, we have spoken about them, but I feel like we haven't done them justice, so I appreciate that, Tim.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to do like a massive career retrospective of Duran Duran because, their career is long and they have lots of hits and all that kind of stuff. And then they've had a few members come in and out. Fair. I'm going to sort of cover the basics with Duran Duran here at the beginning of the episode. But what I thought I would do was talk about their compilation album, Decade.
Okay.
Now, their compilation album, Decade, came out in 1989. And really, if you're a casual Duran Duran fan, this album has everything that you need on it. It's hit after hit. And a lot of these songs even had videos made for them. So I remember buying this album on CD from Woolworths in Twickenham. So I used to live in Twickenham many, many years ago, and they had a Woolworths there. And the UK Woolworths is like a general store, or it was. They actually went bankrupt. But it was a general store, much like Target, I suppose. It was a similar kind of mix. They very early on, they did groceries, and they got out of that business. And they were famous for pick and mix. And they were famous for general housewares and clothes and toys and things like that. But they used to sell lots of music, CDs, tapes, records, etc. And they owned this company. I think it was called MVP. And MVP was the UK distributor for lots of music, for CDs, tapes, and records. So even though they were selling into Woolworths, they were selling into Our Price, into HMV, and lots of other shops as well that carried that physical music. They had sort of had their fingers in the pie, as it were.
Makes sense. For those who don't know, Tim was trying to remain his composure because he just watched me spill my drink all over my shirt while he was talking. But anyway, moving along.
It wasn't so much of an injury, more of a spillage.
My seltzer water attacked me. That's all we're going to say.
Well, there we are. Well, let's just with your fresh seltzer water stain, as it were, let's just have a quick overview of Duran Duran. So Duran Duran were formed in 1978, and the lineup has changed a few times, but Simon Le Bon has been like the longest standing member of the band. The current members are Simon Le Bon, Nick Rhodes, John Taylor, and Roger Taylor. Now, Roger Taylor is not the same Roger Taylor who's the drummer in Queen.
I'm convinced if you want a very talented child, though, just name them Roger Taylor if that's your last name. But anyway.
Exactly. And they've been very successful almost from the outset. The 80s is probably their peak era. And what we're going to talk about in the compilation tonight pulls mostly from their 80s era. But, they had hits in the 90s. And even now, they're still out there gigging. I think they have a new album coming out soon. They're incredibly prolific.
I know they're still touring. I see their concert come up occasionally. I've debated going. Have you seen them live, Tim?
No, I've never seen them live, but on Peacock, there is a live Duran Duran concert. And I think it was from the early 2000s, and it is really good. And one of the things about Duran Duran is a lot of acts, if you will, from the 80s, or even all the way through time, were pop acts, were, just a vocalist, and they weren't necessarily the band that played the music. But Duran Duran are a proper band, and each person in that band has a very definite sound that they make, which makes that Duran Duran music.
Very specific, and kind of what I think of when I think quintessential 80s.
Oh, well, absolutely 100%. They were right there at the beginning of the MTV generation with their groundbreaking videos and what have you. The other thing about Duran Duran, did you know where they got their name from?
No.
So they got their name from the film Barbarella.
Oh, I think you said this on one of the episodes, but I don't remember exactly what the whole thing was.
Yeah, it was in this 1968 film Barbarella, and there's a character in Barbarella called Duran Duran, D-U-R-A-N-D, but they shortened it to Duran Duran.
Oh, there you go. I've never really thought about it. I mean, If I heard Duran Duran now, I would just assume you're talking about the band. I've never associated it really with the word.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I have seen Barbarella a few times. It's been a long time since I've seen Barbarella. And it's famous for having Jane Fonda in it, and she's like stripping off in Zero Gravity in the opening titles and all this kind of wacky stuff going on. But it's a sort of a time capsule of that time in cinema.
It's something. That's all I can say. I've seen it before. It's been a long time, though. It's probably been a good 10 years. And it's one of those ones that, like you said, it's a cult classic for people who are into it, though.
Yeah, I have the soundtrack album for it, and it's like very like experimental. It's almost like avant-garde jazz music, but played with what they thought were futuristic sounding instruments.
It's what Xanadu is trying to do.
It's the same kind of idea, but with some of it slightly more discordant.
Yeah, they're trying to give you that almost ominous feel. I don't know. I always find it funny when we talk about things like that, because that's what we assume aliens would be into. But I always find that humorous, Tim, because we have no actual point of reference to know that. I've thought about this a lot with like aliens and zombies. Like, we always assume aliens are going to be into like kind of almost like a technological thing. But what if they're not? What if we meet aliens and they're literally like the Flintstones? We don't know. Because do you know any aliens? I don't. Why do we always assume aliens are going to be next level, like technologically advanced and love music that's played on a synthesizer? And why do we always assume zombies are going to be slow moving craziness? Like, I just always wonder, like, what if we get those World War Z zombies that are going 1,000 miles an hour? I'm just saying.
I would assume that people think that aliens are going to be next level technology because they would have to have some form of technology to travel to Earth.
But what if they just accidentally, like, their spaceship ran out of gas or something? I'm just saying, we are assuming, because look at us, and we would be aliens to them, and not all of us are that smart.
Well, I mean, the other thing to think of is, would their spaceship necessarily run on unleaded?
Exactly. We will never know. What if their fuel still has lead in it? So, true story, my dad was talking about this the other day. I never told Tim this story, but Charlie had to fight the system to get his Prius approved through, like, in America, you have to do like a safety and like and in certain areas you have to do like a check for like emissions. Where we live at, you don't have an emissions check, but there are some basic things they check. Anyway, my husband, everybody, drives a Prius, literally one of the least emissions vehicles you can get. Well, they tried to fail him because there was a little sticker that was missing. He fought the system and won. It was a whole thing. So upon hearing this, my dad told me a story about he one time almost failed of it, like for a car or truck, I think it was, because they said that he was missing a little gauge that was in vehicles to stop you from being able to get leaded fuel, right? And he ended up fighting it and won because it was like not even that long ago. He goes, where in the world am I going to buy leaded fuel in 2000 and whatever? Like, that's how he won, because like, where are you going to get leaded fuel, Tim?
Well, they sell pure gas here. So I don't think this is a thing that you have in the UK. So UK petrol, if you will, has different grades, but it is made just of dead dinosaurs. And then like here, there's a certain percentage of it has ethanol in it. And I think maybe they may have started that in the UK. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't like that when I lived there. And depending on the grade of the gas, if you like, is how much ethanol they put in it, and also how rich it is and all this kind of stuff. But there are places around here that will sell you pure gas, which doesn't have ethanol in it, but pure gas is still unleaded.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, it was just funny because he looked right at the guy and he was like, that's how he won. He went to his bus and he was like, where am I going to buy leaded fuel at? And it was kind of like one of those obsolete things that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you can get lead additive in like advanced auto parts, but I don't think that actually has lead in it. I think it's some kind of synthetic substitute. Yeah, it's something you put in. If you have a super old car, you put this lead substitute in it and it stops the valves pinking.
Well, there you go, Tim. I mean, I don't particularly need that information, but if I did, now I know.
Yeah. Well, I when you win the lottery, I know you said you was going to buy me a 1982 Trans Am, and you'd probably want to fill it up with a tank of gas before you gave it to me. So now you know.
Of course, that's how we'll fix it. All right. We have not spoken once about Duran Duran since this episode has started. Let's move along.
Well, let me just recognize one member of Duran Duran, and that's the bass player, John Taylor. Now, he has been a member of the band for almost the whole of its career. I think he's come in and he's come out a few times, but one thing about him, his bass playing and tone of his bass are incredibly distinctive, and what really drives the Duran Duran sound. He famously played an Aria Pro 2 SB1000 bass. An Aria Pro 2 was a brand of guitars in the 70s and 80s that were very popular. But as you got into the 90s, that brand completely disintegrated. They're made in Japan. They still make guitars and basses, but it's not known in the same sort of or spoken of in the same as like Gibson or Fender or even like Music Man or PRS. It's kind of seen as a cheap off brand these days that used to make half decent stuff. But the SB1000 bass is the sound of Duran Duran. And when I watched that live concert, when he was playing the aria bass, it sounded like Duran Duran. And then on some of the newer songs where he was playing the other manufacturer's basses, it just didn't have that sound.
I mean, I guess it's just it's because Duran Duran has a very specific, if you know, like they're just, like even if it wasn't a Duran Duran song, but it was played like them, I feel like if someone asked me who's singing this, I would guess them instantly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got Simon Le Bon's voice and the songwriting and orchestration and everything like that. But I don't know, it has that sound, and it all comes from John Taylor.
Well, there you go, John Taylor. If you're listening to this podcast, we'd love for you to explain to us how you do that. We record every week. We've been attempting Wednesdays. It hasn't happened a lot recently, but we attempt.
Yeah, anyway. we're available most of the time. Unless I've got a gig, it's all good.
Me and Tim will call into work if we have to. It's fine.
Exactly. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the album Decade. It has 14 tracks, and I aim to cover all of the tracks because I said almost all of them are hits. So let's open with the first track from Duran Duran's Decade, and that is the song Planet Earth. Now, is that a song that you're familiar with?
Yes, it is. And it would have been, I guess this is early 80s for them.
Yeah, I mean, this compilation was released in 1989. So yes, this I believe it's one of their earlier tracks.
Yeah, I would say it's probably not like a number one hit for them, but I've definitely heard it. And it makes sense that it would be like an introductory to the album. I see how that fits as a very first song. Mm-hmm. Like it kind of has, like, weirdly enough, a space feel. Tim, you're on to a little bit of a hit here. Are the aliens listening? I knew it.
Well, maybe the aliens are listening. I don't know. This is broadcast out every week. I mean, do they have broadband internet access? I don't know.
Well, I mean, this song does have like that synthesized feel. So if the aliens did fall in the realm of what we expect them to like, they would like this song.
There we are.
What a weirdly specific thing to say. I'm just saying, I don't understand why we automatically assume that aliens would be in synthesized music.
That's true. I mean, maybe when we meet the aliens, they'll be playing, I don't know, banjo or something. Who can say?
Or they have their own music completely because they're completely separate of us. We've never heard any of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if there's like, I don't know, alien genre?
Here's a question. Did you ever watch the 80s TV show? It's probably been re-shown again, called V.
Yes, because you talked about it before.
Did you watch it when it was on, or just because I mentioned it?
Just because you mentioned it. I didn't know anything about it until you talked about it on one of the episodes.
Yeah, that's one of those 80s sort of cult classics. It was a mini-series, and then it was like a weekly show. And the mini-series was superb. And then the weekly show at the beginning was good, and at the end it nosedived like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, you said it like jumped the shark at some point, but I just remember them like it has like the little red V, like it's the symbol, and then that spaceship, and then there's people in like what looks like jumpsuits, red jumpsuits, I don't know, and a woman with really big hair. That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's Diana. She was the leader of the Visitors.
Of course she was. And she had those sunglasses, like things that like covered her face.
Well, the thing is, because the visitors, the light on Earth was too bright for them, so they had to wear those dark glasses.
Of course. I mean, that all makes all logical sense, and none of that is a weird statement to make.
No, and they were all lizards as well. So what you saw, their faces, what you saw was their faces was just like a rubber mask, and then sometimes they would like pull the mask off and show that they were lizards underneath.
See, that makes more sense to me than just assuming what we feel we know about aliens, because I don't know that I feel like aliens would be humanistic, but I don't know that aliens would be like what we see as like the classic alien on, you know what I mean? What we always take a picture of, show them or whatever. But like for them to look almost like an animal and then cover their face up to look more humanistic makes more sense to me. Or none of this makes any sense and I'm just making it up.
No, I think there's some truth in there with your alien theories. Maybe we need to do an episode on Joy's alien theories.
I always struggle with where do we get our, like, when we start talking about things, like, where do we have our knowledge from that we make these assertions of what we think? Because we don't have any of it. We just don't.
Well, I mean, it's like anything, isn't it? Someone starts off with a genesis of an idea and people just extrapolate off it. And at some point, people assume that that's correct.
I mean, it's true. So basically, it's a worldwide version of telephone.
Yeah, but I mean, that goes for anything, right? I am wearing like a purple T-shirt with the Ultimate Warrior on it, okay? Yeah. Someone at some point decided that this design for a T-shirt was the optimum design, and then everyone stuck with it.
I mean, you make a valid point, Tim. I don't know how I feel about aliens in T-shirts, but I'll think about it more.
But it's the same thing. You think of any idea or goods or anything. Someone made that up initially, and then at some point it got considered to be the standard.
I feel like the difference is, though, is the T-shirt has an apical like thing. Like when we put it on, it goes over our arms. It covers what we want it to cover. It's cool enough. It's airy enough. We have a science into the idea. I don't know if science is the right word, but we have an idea of why that is what it is. But we don't have any actual. I mean, we should call Brian May. If anyone knows what aliens would look like, it would probably be Brian May, and he could tell us.
Of course he could. He probably speaks to aliens. No, I tell you who speaks to aliens: Sammy Hagar.
I knew you were going to bring that up. For those who don't know, just Google Sammy Hagar and aliens. Tim's talked about it before.
Yeah, he claims that he was abducted by aliens. He's in his book Red.
There we go. All right, moving along. This episode's going to be interesting.
Yeah, track 2 of Decade.
We've made it to 2.
Yeah, 4 hours later when we're talking about aliens.
All right, what's the second track?
The second track is the song Girls on Film.
I mean, that kind of is the epitome of what I think of when I think of like a new wave song, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like when new wave became a genre, I don't know if it's like a subgenre, I guess is what it is, like a subgenre of rock. But like Girls on Film is the epitome of what I think of when I think of a new wave song.
Absolutely. And the thing is that made this song, I'd say popular, but certainly lifted it up. They made 2 videos. They made an MTV-friendly version of this video, and then they made an X-rated version of this video. And it was the sort of thing that, I don't know if it was ever shown on UK TV, but it's the sort of thing that, you know, they'd sell a video compilation of Duran Duran, and it had the uncut Girls on Film on it. And I think that kind of like undergroundness about it lifted that song up. And even now, people who've probably never seen the uncut version of the video will probably still be able to tell you about it.
Well, I think you're right. And I also find it really interesting you bring that up, because I talked about this on one of the episodes, but I've been watching this, like, it's like a docuseries on MTV and talking about the I Want My MTV and that whole campaign. And I found it very interesting whenever I started, like, they talked about all the, and this makes sense based on what you're saying, is all the original music videos they put on MTV were all from the UK. because the UK was big on their music video long before America was, which I had no idea. And they talked about they were willing to take like risks and do things that you would never see in America. And music videos was like where they would do it. And that's why probably Duran Duran was a big, probably staple on MTV.
Yeah, because I mean, there wasn't a lot of avenues really to watch music videos in the UK at that time. I mean, you had Top of the Pops, but Top of the Pops wouldn't show the whole video. Even if it was, PG rated, they would make an edit of it. You'd never see the whole thing. But if you went into somewhere like Our Price Records, it was very common that you would have like video hits for sale on VHS. And I don't know if that was a thing that happened here. Not to my knowledge. I mean, it's not like I was alive during some of this, but from what I'm aware, no, it seems like what this documentary is saying is, and it wasn't even just that the music videos I think were popular. I think it's that the UK artists were willing to make risk, and they were almost a little bit more avant-garde and found like music to be more of like a 3D type thing. They wanted to add the video, they wanted to add the structure, almost like a stage show, I guess, in a way. And they found that more predominant in the UK people versus America. In America, for some reason, that just wasn't a thing. And I think it's because you guys had like Top of the Pops where they were showing music videos, whereas, we had Bandstand where it's just Elvis up there gyrating, right? Sure. So I feel like that plays into it. But it is a really interesting, I think it's on Netflix, the one I've been watching. If you're interested in the history of MTV, everybody, it's pretty good. Okay. Well, I will most definitely check that out. Yeah, I'll send it to you after we get off, Tim. But yeah, I just thought it was cool how they kind of talked about that most of the artists, like The Police was a big one, Duran Duran was a big one, things like that. Anyway, moving along. Well, as you know, the very first video ever shown on MTV US was Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star, and Buggles, Trevor Horn, being a UK act. Yes, and that is a song that randomly pops up in my head at all times. And the music video is like, it's funny you say that because like the music video is one of those ones that like you can see point blank in your brain every time. And I guess it's just because it got played so well. Now, what was cool is I did not know. Do you know where the I Want My MTV comes from, Tim? No. So there was a campaign in America. So they were trying to get all these artists to put their videos on, and they were getting pushback. And basically they were being told, this isn't working, da 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 da. And I kind of learned a little bit about this when I was doing the pop-up music video because it was the same people. And so what they did was they were putting it on the radio. They were having people like Billy Idol and things like that do commercials, radio and TV commercials, telling kids to call their local like TV providers and say, I want my MTV, to get it showed across the United States. Ah, okay. And so like Sting, Billy Idol, like all these, it was mostly UK artists, like I was just saying, were used, and they would just say, and it would be like those funny ads you see where they're going like, I want my MTV. Yeah, that's where it came from. There we go. Not that relates. I guess it does, though, because Duran Duran was a pretty much a big staple, I think, at MTV back in the day. Oh, yeah. And, as we go through this list, some of these songs have such huge videos. Like, they're real kind of art pieces more than anything. Makes sense. All right, what's next? Okay, so the track 3 is Hungry Like the Wolf. Which is probably the most famous, if not the most famous Duran Duran song. Well, there's a few on this list that maybe would rank as the most famous, but certainly this is a great track. I was watching the video to this before we hit record tonight, and again, it's just like there's so much going on in that. I feel like it's also a song that's used in TV shows, movies, and if you say hungry like the wolf, like people are like hungry like the wolf, like I feel like it's instinctual. Like it's almost like it's became like a piece of culture versus just a song. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of these songs have been used in other mediums, commercials, films, TV, etc. But yeah, this one, the minute it goes, it's got that real cool riff going all the way through it. It's a good song. Have you played this one in like bands a lot? I feel like this could be a staple for local bands. No, I've never played any Duran Duran songs. Interesting. I mean, I guess they don't have that kind of Southern rock feel around here, but I can see like Hungry Like the Wolf being like exciting for an audience. I could think so. I mean, I maybe have never said this publicly, or certainly never said it on this podcast. My dream band is to be in an 80s tribute band.
Of course it is. I mean, I don't think you have to say that. That seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be in a band playing Crazy, Hungry Like the Wolf and all that kind of stuff. It'd be great.
Well, and there's just, I feel like the 80s has one of the most diverse kind of like we said, you got new wave, you've got your rock, you've got your hair bands, then you've got like the height of pop music, like Michael Jackson kind of height. So you really have every kind of, I feel like the 80s spans like all those different diversity pieces of music.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a very creative time for film, very creative time for TV, and especially for music.
There we go. Well, if anybody wants to start an 80s band, I know a guitarist who might be able to fit you in on the weekends or something.
It'd be fantastic. If you live in Southwest Virginia, I'm well up for that, assuming it fits around the Flagler Hill schedule.
Yes, we will make sure. And as long as you call me at least once a week, Tim, so I could sing some backup vocals once or twice. That's all I ask.
There we are.
Anyway, all right. What is our next song?
Well, the next one is Rio.
Oh, well, you're right. And now that I said that about Hungry Like the Wolf, this might be their most favorite song.
The name is Rio and and this is the famous video that has Simon Le Bon's boat Drum in it. Now, I did some research on Drum. He no longer owns Drum. He sold Drum. And he was involved in some kind of like sailing competition or some kind of event like that. So being a rich rock star, he buys a boat and decides he wants to compete in it. And whoever designed the boat, the hull of the boat, there's like some various materials it's made out of, and they were not adhered properly, or the materials were incorrect. So when they were going through the water, it cracked and then it sank.
I find that funny you said that, because when I was doing the pop-up music video episode, this was one of the videos. We didn't talk about it, but supposedly after the video, because they said it was like he got like the yacht and he was driving around like the Caribbean, and then there's something about them in like the English Channel or something. I don't know. It's like shot in different locations, but it says like LeBon and Taylor all went for a swim right after they got done and were inches away from sharks. That was the pop-up music video fact. Like they had to like scramble and get back up on the boat because they was going to attacked by sharks.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that, but the interesting
I just remember it was on the episode. I don't know if we talked about it, but I definitely remember hearing them say that.
The interesting thing about Drum, as I said, it sunk. I don't know whether there was any sharks in the water that it sunk in, but they pulled it out of the water. And then it got repaired and then sold. And someone else owns Drum. I forget they said who has it, but that boat still lives.
See, that's funny, because now I'm like, when did they go swimming? Did they go swimming between takes? Did they go swimming right before it sunk? Did it sink later? I have logistical questions.
Well, it didn't sink during the filming of Rio. It was during some competition that they were doing. I forget the name of the game, but it was some kind of like fancy pants boating type competition affair.
You know, it's kind of weird that they didn't bring the boat to like the Rio area, like Rio Grande or something. I don't know why it's in like the Caribbean. The more I think about it.
Who can honestly say?
I don't know. Maybe we should call them and ask Tim. Gosh.
Yeah, I think at the end of this episode, there's going to be a lot of questions for Duran Duran.
Or for people who are really into aliens.
It could go either way.
All right. So you said there's 14 songs. What's our next one?
Okay. So the next one, track 5, it's Save a Prayer, which is a sort of a ballad, I suppose. I mean, it's a lot more laid back than the other songs on this compilation.
I've never really heard this. I've heard it, but I wouldn't say I'm super familiar with this song by any stretch. I mean, it makes sense, though, that it goes along with the album, right? Kind of, because you had a lot of upbeat songs. Well, you had our alien spacey intro, then you had your little upbeats, and you've got Hungry Like a Wolf and Rio. I see how it fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if this one was necessarily a single. It probably was, but I don't think it has the same kudos as Rio or Girls on Film or any of that kind of stuff.
And yeah, I mean, I just don't know that it probably charted here in America. Like, I've heard it, but only like when you're going through your Spotify playlist and it happens to come on and you just let it play.
Yeah, well, I highly recommend that you add Duran Duran's Decade to your album collection on Spotify and go through all these tracks after we finish recording, because all of them are classics. And I think when you hear it You'll probably like Save a Prayer. It's kind of mellow. It's cool, you know.
Yeah. So, speaking of which, Tim, how is your Spotify life treating you? Has anything changed, or are you still into it?
No, I'm still super into it, building my playlists. I've got my albums all queued up that I listen to. I still more or less exclusively listen to CDs when I'm at home. But if I'm at work or in the car, I'm fully Spotify'd up.
Well, there we go, guys. Tim's officially sold on the Spotify life, and they never gave him the weird version for like 5 minutes that I had that went back.
Well, now you go through the home screen and it gives you all the tiles. And then if you scroll up, it gives you that TikTok rubbish. And I don't even go down there and look.
Yeah, I just like mine. Like when I first did it, though, it was like automatic and then it changed. And I was like, OK, I can come back. I don't have to go there anymore.
Yeah, they've put it in a place where I never have to see it and I will never use it.
That reminds me, Tim, speaking of TikTok, I was talking to Tim about this earlier this week, and there was something that came up and I said, video, like he was talking about X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, the sinking ship over there. And he was complaining because, you know, he really enjoys that kind of the way it's set up on social media. And I was reading this article recently, and it really discussed the idea of video format versus written format and how everything is going to a video format kind of thing nowadays, and even on social media. And I understand that, but I also think that there is a time and a place where written format is so much better. And an example of what I hate is when you go to like an article, like it could be like a celebrity news article or a regular news article or whatever. I don't want to watch a video of news. I want to read the article.
Oh, 100%. I don't use TikTok. I will never sign up for it. And there's a few reasons. One, it's done in portrait. And I don't like portrait video. I find portrait video really annoying. And especially like I've spent most of last week editing video and people submitting videos in portrait. It's really annoying what you have to do with it to make it work in widescreen. So that I don't like that. Secondly, TikTok, it auto plays, which is something else I don't like, which is everything seems to autoplay. Like you open up like Hulu and it auto plays. I really do not like that.
And it'll be the same episode of the show. You'll see the same 30 seconds over and over. But anyway. Yeah.
And then the other thing is that, like, when I'm sitting on the sofa downstairs, I've got my CDs playing and I'm enjoying my CDs. And like you say, I like the text format as I spin through on my iPad. What I don't want to do is have to have something that I have to have the sound on because I'm already listening to sounds. I hate when there's two sounds playing together. It really, really annoys my brain.
I do too.
So all of those things make me never, ever want to use TikTok.
I use TikTok, but not for the reason that some people do. I like to do it for like recipes for like food and stuff. Does that make sense? Like I'm not like into like all the other stuff. Some of it's funny, but and I've made a few TikToks that are kind of humorous, but like I'm not a huge TikToker. But I think that for me, I'm okay with if I know I'm opening the TikTok app, I know I'm going to be watching videos, right, Tim? I know what to expect. It's when I go to click on an article to read or anything and it wants me to watch a video, I get frustrated. Like I want to read it and process it in my own way, especially when it comes to news articles or like kind of like when people are discussing things. I don't want to have to watch a video about it.
100%. I completely agree with you.
But it's interesting because this article was talking about people there's kind of been people revolting against the constant video feed. Like people now are kind of wanting to go back to almost like a written kind of, because it's like, it feels like social media is bombarded with videos.
Yeah. Well, what happened is bandwidth increased and compression algorithms improved. So you could get high quality video in a very small file size. And then, you know, the platforms were able to deliver that content because, you know, software and devices all moved on to support full motion video.
I also think that what plays into it is like almost our vainness as a society. Like if you become famous on the internet, your face, you know what I mean, is what becomes famous nowadays in a way. And so there's just something about that in a video format where it's like, you know, a writer, half the time people don't even know what they look like. But we as a society are kind of obsessed with almost like celebrities like the Kardashians. And so I feel like the video format on social media plays into that.
I tell you, you wouldn't catch me making videos with my face in it playing guitar. I just wouldn't do that.
Never seen Tim before at all. Well, you know, I wonder how many people see the videos on your YouTube, Tim, and they're like, he doesn't doesn't look 97.
Well, if you're listening to this, go on YouTube, look up the channel Tim O'Sullivan Guitarist. There are a number of videos on there I've made. I think my one I'm most proud of is my Knight Rider video. I've done one with Elton John. I've done a few other ones here and there.
One with Joy.
One with Joy, of course. And there's a couple that I've pulled off WWF Wrestling that don't really belong on there, but that's beside the point.
Anyway, moving along. I forgot what song. Whatever. Go to the next song.
Okay. The next track is called "Is There Something I Should Know," which is maybe a track that I don't know if you even know that track.
I guess I should know it because it's asking me, but I'm not sure I do. I find it humorous that the name of the title is This Something We Should Know?
Yeah, I mean, when I was listening to the compilation, just researching and check I was familiar with all the songs, I thought, do I know that one? And then when I played it, I was like, oh yeah, it's that one. But I'd be surprised if you knew this.
Not off the top of my head, no. It might be one that if you played it, I'd be like, oh, I've heard that before, but you gotta have album filler somewhere.
The album filler comes in at track 6.
In case anybody was wondering. All right, well, let's go to track 7, and hopefully it's a song I know. Okay,
track 7 is called Union of the Snake. Is that a song that you're familiar with?
It is a song that I'm familiar with, but only because, not for obvious reasons, but only because whenever I was clicking through my Spotify, it was one that I thumbed up once, and now it every once in a while comes up on my Spotify. But it's not a song I seek out by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that it sounds very like other songs I've heard in the 80s. Like, it has a very familiar song that plays. It's less of their new wave, I guess is what I'm looking for, more of kind of like a poppy kind of rock sound.
Yeah, I would go with that. I mean, it's probably one of the least completely identifiable
Duran Duran that's the way I was trying to say. I wouldn't know it was them off the top of my head if you just played this song for me.
No, absolutely not.
But I will say, I don't know if I've ever seen the music video. Have you seen the music video of this song?
I don't know if there is a music video for that song. I mean, I watched about half a dozen videos before we hit record, and I certainly didn't search for it, but it didn't come up as Union of the Snake as one of them.
Well, it is a good song, though. If you're interested in Duran Duran, I would say go listen to it, everybody.
Yeah, I highly recommend it, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, what's our next song?
Okay, now the next one, I saw the video for this about 5 minutes before I hit record and play on this episode. And this is The Reflex.
The Reflex. Since you've been talking about Duran Duran, I've had The Reflex in my head. This may actually be their most famous song.
I think so. And it has a cool music video. So it's pretty much a standard performance video.
Yeah.
And there's various bits cut into it, but it's pretty much a standard performance video. But it has a weird thing where they have a screen above the stage showing the concert, which probably for early 80s was pretty unique, I would imagine. And I don't think there was an actual screen when they recorded it. I think it was probably put in post, or at least the content was put in post. But there's a bit in it where it cuts to like the audience and you can see the stage and the screen. And then the screen sort of changes and then water starts pouring out of the screen and landing on the audience. And of course, this was done in post. There was no real water. Yeah. But you see like audience people who are not really in the audience probably, and the amount of water being sort of shown coming off this screen is like it's like Niagara Falls, and then you see the people there and you just see like some water splashed on their face.
So they didn't really have a big reflex to it. Like you would imagine if said Niagara Falls hit you in your face, you would have a large reflex to it. Now, one thing I do know about this song, Tim, and this is completely random, but it goes back to our Nile Rodgers kind of like thing. Did you know Nile Rodgers did a version of the reflex?
Yeah, well,
you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, I can believe that because Nile Rodgers produced a lot of these songs, and I think he maybe even co-wrote some of these songs too. He worked with Duran Duran a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously me and Tim have talked pretty heavily about Nile Rodgers, but if you go on YouTube and you just look up the Reflex and Nile Rodgers, you'll find his version. It's pretty similar, but it kind of has a little bit of a more funky groove because, the Reflex is not exactly Nile Rodgers, but I could see how he could be behind all of this because he seems like one of those people.
Yeah, he a lot of music in the 80s, especially. He wrote and he produced and he played guitar, and he played that hardtail Strat that he has that he calls the Hitmaker. And it's that very identifiable kind of clean funk guitar sound, and it's all over all these songs, like Madonna's songs and all kinds of stuff. Bowie, it's all going on with Nile Rodgers.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, though. He also seems like one of those people who probably has just a good ear, and when he hears a song, he knows when it's going to be a hit.
Yeah, absolutely. He claims that the Hitmaker guitar that he got in a pawn shop for like $700 has generated $2 billion of revenue. That's what he says. That's why he calls it the Hitmaker.
I mean, he might not be too far off.
I could believe it.
Because, I mean, how many times have we talked about just random people that you don't know, and then somehow me and Tim will weave in there? But did you know Nile Rodgers? And it doesn't even have to be like famous. Like, there's been many episodes where somehow me or Tim have said, "Oh, but Nile Rodgers is playing on that," and everybody's like, "Really?"
Yeah. Anytime you hear that clean, funky guitar, and it was from the 80s, it probably had Nile Rodgers involved in it.
That's Tim's piece of advice. If you're ever on Jeopardy and they name a song that has a clean, funky vibe and you don't know who to guess, just guess Nile Rodgers. You'll be right at least 7 out of 10 times.
Absolutely.
All right, what's the next song?
Well, the next song, track 9, is The Wild Boys. Now, I've spoken about The Wild Boys many times before, and I watched the video before we did the record just to refresh my memory on The Wild Boys. And the video is sort of like a dystopian future. Some of it's in black and white. And it's almost like, if you know the video for Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, it sort of had some of the same scenery, I think.
You're right. I've never really thought about that, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's that sort of like Mad Max dystopian future style setup, and there's an animatronic head in it that breathes fire that didn't really breathe fire because it was done in post-production, but it has that in it. But the bit that bothers me, and it still bothers me to this day after watching the video, there's a huge windmill, and Simon Le Bon is strapped to one of the pieces of the windmill, and he's lip syncing the song, and he's going around in the windmill. But when it gets to the bottom, it dunks his head in the water. And I don't know why, but that still bothers me.
I had never picked up on that, but who knows? 5 episodes ago, 20 episodes ago, 37 episodes ago, Tim mentioned it. And of course, I had to go seek it out after the episode. And it's really weird. And he's right. It is giving like Mad Max, like ripped up dystopian kind of clothing and like background. Until he made the Frankie Goes to Hollywood reference, I wouldn't have thought about it. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, but it is kind of weird.
It is sort of weird. I think it goes with the sort of theme of the song and the kind of the music that's being played in that song. But yeah, I said, well, I was watching it today and I thought, yeah, some of that scenery was in the Relax video, I'm sure.
Now, the Relax, the song is an earworm for me. And I get it in my head all the time.
Yeah, and it's very similar to Autograph's Turn Up the Radio.
Now that you said that, yes. Somebody needs to do it. There's probably a mashup on YouTube of those, I would imagine.
There probably is. And with Relax, there's 2 versions. There's the standard version that was on Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, and they made a 12-inch version, all that kind of stuff. But there's a version called the New York Mix. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it, that's the one they used on Miami Vice. And it's like, it's almost like the intro is like the whole song, and it only gets into the verse and the chorus at the very end. And I don't know, there's something about the way that mix is done, the New York mix. It's really, really good. I really like it.
Huh. I'm not sure I've ever really heard it. I'm going to have to go seek it out now because I love that song. Like I said, it is an earworm of all earworms.
Yeah, and it's got that pumping bass all the way through it. It is such a good song.
I love, though, when people talk about, people complain about the content of music nowadays, and then they look back and remember, and I was singing this in the backseat of my parents' car in the 80s.
I know.
No one ever talks about it. And it literally, I have never heard a song that bluntly says what it says without
I know. And you know what? There's even a sound effect.
I don't.
That's the thing. It's there. There's nothing suggested. Everything is there.
They literally said word for word what the song was about. And it's like, how did this get, you've heard of other songs that got like banned or taken off the radio, like A Prayer by Madonna was like, you know what I mean, Tim? Or like all of these songs were like so scantily, but it's like Frankie Goes to Hollywood did one song that bluntly says what it says and no one batted an eye.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think the BBC banned it eventually, but like Capital Radio, independent radio in the UK, they were still playing it.
I just love, though, I was watching a video the other day where somebody was complaining about modern day music, and then the woman's like, flashback to me sitting in the backseat of my mom and dad's station wagon singing. But I do think that goes into play, and I've said this a lot. There's a lot of songs when you're kids, you're just hearing sound. You don't actually know what it's about. You wouldn't know.
No,
I didn't know.
No, absolutely not.
But anyway, if you don't know what we're talking about, just give it a Google. Moving along.
Just listen to it. Just listen to the lyric very literally. Listen to the sound effect. Listen for the grunt that's made, and you're like, they are. That's all you need to know.
It's not wrong. Like I've never. Okay. Anyway, moving along. This episode's taking a turn.
Well, here we are. Let's go on to the next Duran Duran song. So this is track 10, and this is the song A View to a Kill. Now, this is from the James Bond film of the same name. And the interesting thing about this, Simon Le Bon and I think John Taylor were at some industry party somewhere. And Cubby Broccoli, who was over the James Bond franchise, and they were very drunk, and they went, "Oi, Cubby! When are you going to have some decent music in your films then?" And Cubby Broccoli said, "Well, write me a song and we'll see what happens."
That sounds about right.
But I do have a theory about A View to a Kill. I think it was a song they already had that was called Dance into the Fire.
And they just kind of reworked it for the movie. They shoehorned
the View to a Kill thing into it. Because the chorus in it is Dance into the Fire, which really has nothing to do with A View to a Kill.
Yeah, and I never really understood. I mean, it's kind of cool, and I've seen the artwork with like what I'm guessing it's supposed to be like the gun scope, and it's got like the red, and it's got James Bond in it, and like A View to Kill, right? Like it's literally viewing to kill. But I think you're right. The song really doesn't seem to have anything to do with James Bond.
No. I mean, they've shoehorned the title in there, but I said the main chorus is Dance into the Fire. I just think they had a demo called Dance into the Fire. And like 3 days later, after they woke up from their massive hangover, they said, well, I wonder if we can just shoehorn that into there. There you go. Send that to Cubby, see what he thinks.
I mean, it worked. I'll give it to him. If it works, it works, right, Tim?
Absolutely. And I mean, I would say this is the second best James Bond theme.
I was going to ask how you felt about this one.
Yeah, I mean, Live and Let Die, of course. Well, it's hard. Live and Let Die is the best of the best. And then I think you have Nobody Does It Better, and then you have View to a Kill. They're probably, at any given day, they could flip into second place for me.
See, I was wondering where you were going to put Nobody Does It Better, because we've talked about that a few times, and that's probably at the top for me.
That's true. And again, that has a shoehorn of The Spy Who Loved Me in it.
Yep. Which is amazing.
Me, the Spy Who Loved Me. It's just like Carly's just shoehorned that one in there.
I mean, it's great. It's just, it's literally like pop meets James Bond 101. I don't know how to explain it.
It's a fabulous, fabulous song.
Plus, I mean, as you know, Tim has very specific views on James Bond as a whole. I'm on the fence. I don't know who my favorite is, but Tim's very specific in who he likes.
Yeah, Roger Moore. It's not worth watching any of the others.
Who would have thought that's what Tim was going to say? All right. What is our next song?
Number 11 is Notorious.
That's also, you're right, though. This album has a lot of hits on it.
It does. That has that funky guitar, and I'd imagine that probably is Nile Rodgers.
Well, it's got like a 3-piece kind of thing going on, right? Like it sounds like there's like 3 different kind of like different things happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the technical term for that would be, if you would know, Tim, but that's kind of how it sounds.
Yeah, and in fact, I've just checked in the credits, and yes, it was produced by the band and Nile Rodgers. So that guitar is the hit maker that you're hearing on there.
I mean, maybe he was right, Tim, on how much money he made off of this album, on that one guitar. I mean, but at the end of the day, and then it has doesn't it have a horns, like a brass kind of horns thing happening?
It has like a horn break in the middle, and it's kind of like avant-garde jazz type horn break. But even then, it's all the way through. It's got like a horn line that's on the song,
which works because it's got that kind of funky sound. This song, if I had to pick any of the songs, I would pinpoint as Nile Rodgers. This would be the one I'd pick. Yeah,
100%. I'm sure if you get into the albums and the album that came from, I'm sure there's probably a lot more like it. But yes, I think certainly of the songs that we've spoken of today, that one is probably the most kind of like Nile Rodgers funk guitar style thing.
So if you're into that, this would be the one me and Tim would tell you to go listen to. But I don't know. I don't know if it's that they're layering the sound or if there is a 3-piece guitar, but there's definitely multiple play. Like I would imagine Nile Rodgers is playing one piece and then somebody else is playing the other two.
Yeah, or he's multi-tracked it himself.
That's true. You make a good point. It's not like that's not capable of happening. But with that being said, it definitely sounds layered to me.
Yeah, well, luckily Les Paul invented that in about 1930, or 1940, so the technology is available.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you, Tim. But what I was gonna say is, when you're breaking down a piece like that for to play in the general public, like if it's got like a 3-part guitar and you do not have 3 guitarists playing in a band, how do you generally kind of circumvent that, Tim? Like, what's kind of your process to make sure that works?
What you do is you try and get the essence of what's being done.
Okay.
For example, I was listening to The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love, and I've played that in bands where I'm pretty much the only guitar player or the only lead guitar player. Nice. And when I listened to it the other day, fresh, and I hadn't heard it for years and years and years, because in my head, I can hear the version I've played for a long time in bands. When I heard the original again, I was like, well, hang about, there's a vocal line in here. There's the guitar line in here. There's another guitar line in here. There's a harmony thing going on. And I think what you do is you just try and capture the essence of what's being played and make it to a point where you're playing a line that's recognizable. And I think if you was going to do Notorious, you would probably capture some of that funk guitar and then maybe some of the runs. But you're limited with what you have because you only have 1 or 2 instruments on the stage. And that's what you have to do, just sort of capture the essence of the song.
I mean, it makes sense because what you want to do is you want to make sure people can tell what song you're playing, right? So you're going to play the most obvious, I would imagine, chord progressions or what the build of the song is.
Sure, absolutely. And, even a lot of these bands, when you go to see them live, they don't have all the instruments that they had in the studio. And even with Queen stuff, all the way through the ages, like, for example, Killer Queen, famously has that 3-part harmony solo with all the bells come in and it's panned left and right. Course. But of course, live, they could never do that. So Brian May would just play a line which sort of had the essence of the tune in it. But of course, it's not completely doing what he did in the studio.
Well, and I mean, as a vocalist, we do the same thing. There are many times you really think, the operatic parts of Queen, they're not doing that live. They're, you know what I'm saying? So I guess it makes sense. I just never really thought about it till I was thinking, I doubt people playing this song live are always going to have 3 guitarists on stage right now doing all 3 pieces. So
no, unless you're Iron Maiden, and then you do have 3 lead guitarists on stage.
That's a debate for another time. There's a lot happening in those shows, Tim.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let me ask a stupid question. You brought it up. Generally, though, someone's got to be the lead, right? And the other 2 are just probably going to be, you could be a rhythm guitarist, of course, or you could play, I don't know. There has to be someone that's basically playing lead at all times, right? You can't just have 3 people running amok.
Not always. I mean, some songs don't have a lead part all the way through. So, in the case of Iron Maiden, they've ended up with 3 guitar players because a guitar player left and then a guitar player came back. And then they just decided they wanted to keep them all. So through most of the songs, when there's vocals on, there's no real leads going on. But when... True. When in the case of Iron Maiden, they saw that Thin Lizzy school of guitar playing, where often you'll have dual lead guitars and they're like playing the same part together but in harmony. So when you do that, you want to have a rhythm guitar behind it, and that's probably where you use the three. And that's like with Lynyrd Skynyrd as well, that had three guitar players. But but most of the time when you're on stage, even in the most rockiest of rock band, most of the time you're just playing rhythm guitar.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I will say that makes sense, though, because like singing, if you have two people singing and they're both singing the lead, a lot of times they're going to be, at least in certain parts of the song, they're going to be harmonizing, right? They're going to be someone singing a higher octave, a lower octave, and then they're probably singing the same notes, but they're a different register. Like, so that checks, Tim. I guess you're smart enough. We'll leave it alone. He knows he's talking about everybody.
I've played in a few bands here and there, you know.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it alone. He knows he's talking about everybody. I'm kidding, by the way. But yeah, I never really thought about it till now. So there we go, everybody. And if that was obvious to everyone but me, I'm sorry. That was a legitimate question. All right, what's the next song?
Well, here we are, track 12. And this is the song Skin Trade. Is this a song that you're familiar with?
Yes, but not like an everyday song in my life. Like I said, I think I liked this album on Spotify one time, and now some of these songs pop up. But I mean, I don't know if was this a pretty popular song in the UK, or was it just kind of one that if you were a Duran Duran fan, you would have heard?
Yeah, it might have been a B-side. It might have been an album track, and it's certainly put on this decade probably to fill it. But I mean, it's a pretty good song. It's one, again, that's produced by Nile Rodgers. I just looked on the credits, and it does have some of his kind of funky guitar thing going on, and it has a horn line as well.
Well, what I was going to say is LeBon, though, in this song, from what I remember, is he's singing a lot in falsetto. Like, he has a lot of falsetto parts in this song, so it makes it very interesting because he has a very good voice and very detailed. Like, there's, like, a rich sound to his voice. And in this song specifically, his falsetto comes out, and you don't hear it that often.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a thing about Simon Le Bon. I read in an interview that he either sings major over minor key songs or minor key over major key songs. It's something like that, which gives him a very distinct sound to his voice when he sings.
Well, that does make sense, though, because he does have, like, even, like, just thinking about the songs we've talked about tonight, think about the way Hungry Like the Wolf sounds. Like, there's very distinct, like, major and minor parts of that and back and forth. It's almost like he has, like, a break in his voice. You know what I'm talking about, Tim? Like, he's either here or he's here, and there's not a lot of in the middle. Interesting.
Yeah, I read that in an interview somewhere. I forget which way round it was, but he said that's what set him apart to give him his unique sound.
It makes sense because I think it also plays into that kind of new wave synthetic pop thing where you have like those richer tones. Like it gives that effect in somebody's voice naturally too. Mm-hmm. Smart, Mr. Le Bon. Smart. And that's very interesting because I will say his voice, because like almost like in the falsetto in this song, it almost reminds me of like a Mick Jagger type thing, which you don't hear as often. Mm-hmm. But if I think back to like Rio or something, yeah, it does flow very easily. It's almost like he's either his head voice or his chest voice, and there's not a lot in the middle. Well, Le Bon, if you're listening, explain that to me because I find that very interesting.
There we are. I know he does listen, so if he wants to just come on the show, we'd be more than happy to have him.
One day, Tim, we're going to catch somebody and they're going to show up. Don't know who it will be.
We'll send you a Zoom link. It'll be perfect.
What would we do if we just like started like messaging people Zoom lists that were celebrities and then they just started showing up? Me and Tim would be like, okay, well, you first.
Okay, Mr. Roger Taylor, you first.
It's going to be a long night. All right. Yeah, but I remember this song. I would imagine Nile Rodgers is probably playing on this one too, like you were saying.
Yeah, 100%.
And the thing that sticks out to me is, as far as the song goes, the vocals on this song are different than most of the other Duran Duran songs.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Well, what's next?
Okay, so I'm going to class the last two tracks, number 13 and number 14, as just one entry. And that is I Don't Want Your Love and All She Wants Is. Now, I think there was a break in the career of Duran Duran, and I think one of those tracks was considered a comeback. So I remember buying I Don't Want Your Love as a 7-inch single. I got that from Woolworths in Hounslow because they used to do a thing with their 7-inch single bin where when things would fall out the charts, you could buy them for like 50p or 25p or something like that. So I remember buying it as it fell out of the charts. I don't think either of those tracks are sort of classed as, classic Duran Duran, but I think they were both sort of hits at the time.
I mean, I've definitely heard them. All she wants is has like a thump, has like a almost like a I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't want to say thumping, but like it's got like a build to it that's kind of cool.
Yeah. She wants to.
Yeah. So we were talking about how he plays around with his vocals, but I feel like the music in and of itself and that song's kind of bumping. I don't really remember the other song that much. I've seen the little heart with the X on it, so I imagine that's probably from the single. But that song specifically sticks out to me, and it's kind of cool that they ended the album with that. Like, that's cool. It's almost like a build.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, some of the other Duran Duran compilations that are out there expand on the era after these tracks, and there is some good music by Duran Duran, but I think for me it sort of ends there.
Yeah, and that all she wants is almost danceable. Like it's got like a dance groove to it that you don't. I mean, yes, synthetic kind of pop new wave has like a kind of a beat to it, but I would say this is probably of all the songs you've brought up what I would think of like the danceable song. Absolutely,
100%.
Which goes like full circle from where it began to where it ends. So it's kind of an interesting album. I'm glad you talked about the whole thing, Tim, because I can imagine this album being one that if you listen to, like, it'd be really cool to listen from beginning to end.
Yeah, and I have done many times because the original CD I bought from Woolworths in Twickenham has long disappeared into the sands of time. But when I started rebuilding my music collection again, in fact, this is one of the first ones I repurchased because I liked it so much.
Is this one you feel like people could find at all the thrift stores easily, or is it an easy thrift find?
No, I've never seen it for sale in a thrift shop. I got my copy off eBay. But no, the funny thing about thrifting recently, it's completely dried up.
It really has. And it feels like the prices in thrifting have gone up too.
Yeah, I mean, we have stores in the US called Goodwill, and they are not a charity organization at all. They are a for-profit company. They have an outreach program where they employ and train people who couldn't normally get a job. So they do have some good programs, but they are a massive for-profit company that get all their stock for free because people think it's a charity. Yep. And what they've started to do is sell the cream of the crop of the donations on their internet site, and all you get in the stores is junk, and it's overpriced junk.
And it's the part, like, prices have skyrocketed. So, like, the other day I was looking at, I think, a pair of pants, Tim. And I was like, forget it. I'll just go into Target and buy this for $5 more because it was that expensive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as we've said before, there are lots of little thrift shops that support local charities and organizations, and they're the ones to go into. And then they're still selling, you donate that store, that stuff's going to get sold. I mean, unless someone donates something of such a ridiculous high value, of course, they're going to sell it by other means. But your standard stuff that people donate, they're going to sell it in the store at a reasonable price, and people are going to come back and back and back and spend money in there. But as I said, the Goodwill is just, it's done.
It's hit or miss. Now, Charlie, my husband, as Tim knows, is a big thrifter. He has had some luck, Tim, recently. But he's had some luck with, weirdly enough, coffee mugs. Like, we've gotten a lot of, like, Disney and, like, Star Wars and, like, very popular coffee mugs. I don't know what it is, but in the last probably month, Charlie has brought me home, like, 6 coffee mugs that were actually pretty cool. Nothing else but coffee mugs. So if you're in the mood, that's what you should look for.
There we are. Yeah, we went through a phase of buying, like, teacups and coffee cups and stuff like that, but then I painted the kitchen and Hannah wanted all the colors to match, so we haven't had so many of those since.
Such a Hannah statement to make.
Well, there we go.
All right. Well, is there anything you'd like to leave the people with, Tim?
I would like to say, seek out the Decade album by Duran Duran. You will thoroughly enjoy it. And as ever, just be super kind to everyone, especially anyone that you meet that you don't know. Just be kind to them. Show them kindness.
I agree. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.